From the Pep Radio Newsroom, this is the News Blast for Sunday, September 7th, available only to our YouTube subscribers and social media followers. Fire has broken out at the Ukraine Cabinet building in Kyiv. Russia has attacked with 805 drones and 13 missiles, most of which were intercepted, according to Ukraine's Air Force. Strikes hit residential areas in Kyiv, killing at least 2 people, and set fire to one of the main government buildings. Ukraine's president and prime minister continue to urge global allies to ramp up pressure on Russia by strengthening sanctions against the country. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the EU and the U.S. can apply pressure together. The U.S. is prepared to apply more pressure on Russia, according to U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who said that while also calling on European allies to follow suit. Bessent said U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance had a very productive call with European Commission head Ursula von der Leyen following Russia's large-scale rocket and drone attack on Ukraine. We are talking about what can the two, the EU and the U.S., do together, Bessent told U.S. outlet NBC. And we are prepared to increase pressure on Russia, but we need our European partners to follow us. U.S. President Donald Trump has voiced intent to sanction countries that buy Russia's oil in order to tackle one of Russia's main sources of income, with India being the only country to suffer from so-called secondary tariffs so far. U.S. President Donald Trump, meanwhile, has said he was prepared to apply new sanctions on Russia without giving any further details on whether the sanctions are going to include Moscow's trade partners. Asked about whether he was intending on imposing more sanctions against Moscow, he replied, "Yes, I am." This comes after Russia's largest ever rocket and drone attack on Ukraine since its large-scale invasion of its neighbor in 2022. Meanwhile, the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, condemned Russia's aerial bombardment of Ukraine and gave her full backing. Once again, the Kremlin is mocking diplomacy, trampling international law, and killing indiscriminately, von der Leyen posted on X. Europe stands and will continue to stand fully behind Ukraine. We are reinforcing Ukraine's armed forces, building lasting security guarantees, and tightening sanctions to increase pressure on Russia, the EU chief said, adding, the killing must end. And finally, Ukrainian President Zelensky is coordinating next steps with France's Emmanuel Macron. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said he had spoken to French President Emmanuel Macron following Russia's aerial strikes on Ukraine. We coordinated our diplomatic efforts, next steps, and contacts with partners to ensure an appropriate response, Zelensky said in a post on the platform X. Together with France, we are preparing new measures to strengthen our defenses, Zelensky said. In a separate post, Macron expressed his support for Ukraine, saying, together with Ukraine and our partners, we stand for peace. Russia, meanwhile, is locking itself ever deeper into the logic of war and terror, Macron said, adding that everything would be done to ensure a just and lasting peace prevails. Macron hosted a coalition of the willing talks ahead of the weekend, after which 26 countries pledged to contribute towards Ukraine's post-war security. That's our News Blast. Tune in to Pep Radio tomorrow morning between 6 and 10 for updated news on the situation in Ukraine and other stories. Pep Radio is available on the Live 365 app, the Pep Radio page at paequality.com, Roku, and Alexa. Thanks for watching.